Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. It means it's time for a masterclass session. Today we're going to be showing power users basically how to create these illustrative map frames. What you can see on the screen here is an example of what an illustrative map frame would look like. Basically, it's a border or a frame that's large enough to kind of fit these little scenes inside of. And what makes these very helpful is that you can put whatever you want inside these little scenes, these little panels. For instance, maybe you want the timeline, some kind of timeline of the most important events in your world, or maybe you want to have your pantheon of gods or goddesses in one of the frames, or you want to have the most important factions heraldry, or the major players, the leaders of each faction, whatever it might be. But using these map frames are very helpful to kind of tell a little bit more of the story of your map and kind of boost it a little bit. The only downside to it is that obviously the bigger the frame is, the more you'll have to scale down your map a little bit. So, but it's absolutely doable. So let's just go ahead and get started. Also, if you like this map frame, you can totally use it. I provided the link in the chat. You can just go ahead and clone and edit that for personal uses. So let's jump in and get started. What I'll do first is I'm going to create a new map, and I'm going to use the fantasy world style. We'll choose that style. We'll go to 4K, and we're going to stick your standard landscape. And while this opens, okay, well, it's already open. Let's get started here. So one of the first things that you should do is that I would recommend is that you have a map that you've already made, and then you export it. And I would recommend at least up to 4K for the export. And then if you, then you can go into your catalog, and then you can go to upload, and then you can take that image, that export image, and then you can import it as a custom asset. Don't do it as a texture, do it as a stamp. Okay, so it's important to do that. And this little thing is going to let you know that you're using a private asset. So just know that that's going to affect your cloning. And then what you do is you'll have the image here set up. And now what makes this useful is that now you can scale it up and down like this, and then decide how much of a frame that you want. Now, before you do that, you should probably show grid. Let's do square. Right now, the snap to grid function doesn't work with isometric or the hexes, so you'll have to use a square. Start there, and then you'll go to snap grid, and then I can go ahead and just put it, and it'll snap to the grid. And then from here, I can kind of decide how much room or space that I want to have. So I should probably scale it down a little bit so there's a little bit more room. I want to have enough room to create these kind of scenes. Let's take a look at what we have here. And this is where the grid becomes helpful. You can use the grid to see how many cells there are. So I'll turn snap to grid off. I'll line it up. I think about 4 looks good there. And then we can, honestly, we can transform this by just going like this. Just know that transforming is going to cause some loss of information a little bit. So try not to transform too much, but I'm just barely using transform here, so it's not too bad. And then we'll go to 4 here. And so now I have 4 cells going. Oh, this looks like 5 actually, but 5 is fine. It's okay. You can also go do it all the way if you want it to be even. So I can just scale this a little bit, even more. And now I have 5 cells going across. And so that should fit it. And then once you've done that, I'd set this to layer -4. And then I would lock it so you don't accidentally select it. And then from there, I would change the layer of the grid. You're going to leave it on for right now so that you can use it. And now we're going to create the frame that's going to go around the map. And so you're going to go to the shape tool and make sure you select the stroke. And you'll see, let's try to use maybe one of a mix of them. So let's maybe use this one, the slim acanthus frame. And we'll use a square or the rectangle shape. And then you're going to also put snap to grid. And then we'll go ahead and put it like this. And you might want to change the scale a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it to where the flat edge is on the inside. And the reason why I'm doing that is because the flat edge, you'll notice here that if all these kind of flourishings kind of go into where my plates or where my illustrations are going to be, and so it's going to take up more space. So if I select that and then just flip it, and then I'll have the that way. But I might want to bring the scale down so I can at least see some of the flourishings of the design. And then the same thing, only I'm going to turn merge shape off so I don't accidentally merge them, and then I'll create the frame here as well. And then this time I'm going to flip it to make sure the flat side is on the inside. And I'll bring the scale up just a little bit. And then this looks a little too big, so I'll just bring the scale down. There we go. Now it fits right into there. So that step is done. Pretty easy stuff. And then from here, you'll want to fill this in with the add mode of the mask tool, because we're going to be using clipping masks later. And this is pretty easy stuff. Just use the mask tool, use shape, and then I would just turn snap to grid off, and then also turn enable effects off, and then just go in like this and just make sure that, just go plus, and then I'll go again over on this side, over to here, just make sure that it covers plus, and then I'll do the same thing. Now I'll do the bottom part. There we go, plus. There we go. Okay, let me make sure that it's fully covered, plus. There we go. All right. And then we'll choose some kind of color that we want to be the background. I'll use gray for now. So with your foreground layer selected, go fill, and this will all turn to gray. You can make it a different color if you want, like maybe you want it to be a whitish color. I think I want a little bit of an off-white or grayish color. If it's not bright enough, you can always just go to color, bring the brightness up more, and then fill, and then it will be a little bit brighter. That's up to you. Okay, and now that we've got that part of the frame done, now we can create the individual cells. This is not too difficult to do. Okay, here we go. You can add it to the whole canvas, by the way, Becca. It doesn't really matter. If you want to fill the whole thing, you can. I just do that on the side, because what happens if you haven't made the map yet and you want to create the map within that negative space, and by negative space, I mean within the frame here, then you would want it to be the BG layer so that you could add land with the add mode of the mask tool. But it's up to you. Really, if you're using a stamp as the map, absolutely correct, then you could just fill the whole thing with the add mode. It doesn't matter. I agree with you there. Thanks for pointing that out, by the way. I appreciate it. And then I'll make the BG color black or white or whatever color you want. And that's that ledge around here. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, Becca. Thank you for saying that. I just want to be clear to people so they're not confused. So then the next step now is to use the line tool and to create the individual cells. And so we'll use a different stamp for this. And what I'll do is I'll make sure snap to grid is on. And I'm going to create one frame like this. I'll change the stamp scale. And I've noticed that it's a bright, kind of a bright yellowish color. So, and it doesn't kind of match with the yellowish color of the outside frame. So if you just desaturate it and then bring the brightness up, and then you can change the hue just a little bit, and you can get it to kind of match a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. That's dang close. Okay, now that you got that set up, we can go to copy, paste, put the other one on the other side. Just make sure that it snaps all the way to it. There you go. And then we'll do the other side over here. I usually start with the corners, just like this. Copy, paste, or just enter, and then we'll select it again, and then copy, paste. There we go. All right, and then we'll take the same one that we did right here, copy, paste, and you can push this all the way, either beneath it, like this, or you can put it back up on top where it was before, and then you can just use the portal tool right here to just remove that. And then you can go in and just copy and paste. And it looks like there's, we can make it be, let's see here. We'll make the cells different sizes. And let's see here. Make sure that I selected all my lines here. There it is, my mistake. I think that looks good. Let's just see here. Oh, it's got to go down a layer, my mistake. There we go. I think that's off by a little bit. Let's see here, 6 and 6. Yes. And then copy, paste. Put the next one in there. And then we can just center it right there. There we go. That looks good. And then we can turn the grid off. And then you can kind of see what that looks like there. And then we turn that grid back on. I just wanted to show you what it looks like with it, without it on. And then we'll do the same thing that we did. We'll copy paste. Let's go with that number of cells. And again, you just use the tool. Like this. Again, you could just put them underneath, but I actually want to show because of when we make the illustrations, you have to be wary of borders or of stamps and stuff. So we want to make sure that it works out there. Let's see here. I think that looks about right. Let me see here. That's 5. Let's go with 6. Oop, that looks like 5 as well. There we go, 6. Okay. That's why you need to have the grid, right? So that way you don't make any mistakes with that. And even in this one right here, I can even kind of push it in a little bit. That will create a little bit more space. Same thing here. This should almost even them out. There we go. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and turn the grid off. There you go. And then once you've done that, you can select the whole thing. You've locked your map. So you can just go create group and just call it frame. Create. And since I've made that, I'll just go ahead and save that. I'm just going to call it map frame. Okay. Hey, Rasmus. Glad that you're here, by the way. Awesome. Nice to see some friendly faces here. All right. Now that it's been saved, we can start throwing it in. So now, when it comes to figuring out what to put, I'll also lock it, by the way. And you should probably put the frame all the way up at layer 5 so that any stamps you want to put within each cell will be beneath the frame and not on top of it. Okay, just remember that. All right, and now if you're confused about what exactly to put within these cells, really it depends on what's on your map, right? So if we go to the map and we look at it, and we can see that there's some themes here, right? We've got a more Eastern theme area. We've got an Elven theme area over here. We've got some humans. We've got a Dwarven settlement. We've got a desert. So now when you look at this and you say, okay, well, maybe I want some information about these regions and about these places to be on the map, right? And so one thing you can do is start with the corners, and you could, if there's a whole list of things that we could do. We could put the capital of each one of these areas in each of the corners. And then in the inside panels, we could put like a story, like maybe there's a catastrophe that took place, or it could be a series of battles, or it could be like I said, the pantheon of your gods. There's a whole host. I actually like the pantheon of God's idea, and I do like the idea of putting the capitals in the corners. I think that would kind of emphasize that. So let's do that. And I can see in here that I have my locations. Let's go with maybe an Eastern POI that would work well to go into this piece right here. So we'll start in this corner, and then we'll go into our POIs, and there should be Eastern ones. And let's look at the largest. Let's look at the largest building here. Let's see here. I think this one right here. So we'll look for a POI, and this will represent the capital. And so then I'll go up in here. I have my Eastern stamps. There's a city, a castle. And I want to use, and now when it comes to what kind of stamps to use, that's up to you. Whether you want to use these flat orthographic front-facing stamps, or if you want to use the isometric stamps for your illustrations. This is really depending on your map. Now, because I used isometric stamps for the map itself, it's not a bad idea to maybe do some contrast and use the flat-facing orthographic stamps for the illustrations, right? That kind of makes sense. And also, it also allows for more space, because when you're using isometric layering, it requires more space because you have to keep putting them in front and in the back, right? But with a flat facing stamp, all you have to do is just stack them in front and behind each other. And so that makes it a little bit easier. So let me show you what I mean by that when I say that. So if I take this Eastern city, or I can take this capital, whichever one I want, and I place it down. The cool trick is that let's say I want to put something behind it, I can. Like maybe there's a tower behind it. I can totally do that. I can place it behind it and then make it a little bit darker to make it look like, oh, I'm using contrast to make it look like that building is behind it, if that makes sense, right? Same thing here. If I wanted to use this village right here, I'll put it at layer -5, and I'll put the brightness down even more. And then that will represent that's even farther behind, okay? So you're starting to see the idea. That is much easier to layer and stack those than it is to do isometric. It doesn't mean that you can't, or you shouldn't, but you'll have to probably scale down the isometric stamps a lot smaller to fill in the space. So I'm going to stick with that instead. What I want to do is when I first create a scene, I like to start with the terrain first. So first step, let's start terrain. Let's choose a texture foreground. And let's say that it's, let me look at the ground here in this area. It looks like it's a mix of brown and green. So I think it's okay to use green for that. So I'll just choose this swamp texture, whatever green you want. And then I'll also use shape. And then I'll just go ahead like this, and I'm going to create the ground part. So I'll just apply FG. There's that first ground. Then I'll create the terrain. You could put a hill, you could put mountain, you could put cliffs. I'm going to put a hill here. I don't think that's a bad idea. We'll add a hill. And when adding the hills, you have a couple options here. You can use these right here, the hill that has a clipping mask on it. And I'm going to choose one that's kind of flat. There we go. Let's go with that. That's pretty flat. And of course, if you want, you can just fill in with this. And so what I would do is use a circle brush, turn off the softness with a hard brush. And the reason why you're using the hard brush, it should be fairly obvious, is because you're trying to paint within the lines. 100% opacity will bring the brush size down a little bit. Here we go. It's set to FG layer, and then I'll just paint it in like this. There we go. Okay. That's why I like using stamps with clipping masks. That just look nicer when you do it that way. And then we can go back. We'll grab this stamp here. Let's bring the scale down a little bit. There we go. It should fit that. We'll put that right on the hill there. And then I might want to push these up some layers. There we go. So I have some extra layers to work with. And now the awkward thing about these is you'll notice there's some little dots with the line work here at the edge. And so make sure you just kind of line them up so they're not like hovering over it. They're kind of on it. It's okay if the hill is showing a little bit behind it. That's all right. And then we'll just follow that same formula. I'll put that stamp in the back like I did before. And then I'll also put the tower over here, bring the brightness down a little bit so that kind of sticks out. Put that in the back. Or you can put it like that or like this. It's up to you. Bring the scale down. And then I'll add a series of maybe smaller ones to kind of represent the little town parts. When you're making it, you start with the terrain, and then you build the centerpiece first. That's that center lighter color stamp there. And then you add other stamps to fill in, a tower, a city stamp. And then you would go back to Eastern, and then you can use these smaller little village stamps right here. These work perfect. And just kind of place them in the front like this. Oop, want to be in front. There we go. Another one there. And another one right there, maybe. I think that looks okay. Actually, we'll make it not perfectly symmetrical. So put one, make sure it's fronting here. And then I can also put some mountains in the background. Remember where this location is. There's mountains right here. So let's put some mountains in the background. And I want to use the same mountains that I used on the map. Otherwise, that'll look weird. I think, let's see here. Let me take a look at these mountains. Which ones did I use? Oop, they look like they do have clipping masks. That's good. Here we go. Looks like it's just the average one. And then I'll go ahead and place these all the way in the back. And some nice tricks. If they're not big enough, you can always stretch them so they kind of peek out a little bit. And I want to make sure the line work goes behind the stamp. So now that we have that, let's add a couple more. One over here, one over here. Stack them up, maybe put one up like that. There we go. Okay, and then from there, again, you take that texture that you were using and you're just going to fill it in. Just like that. Pretty easy stuff. So you see how the scene kind of comes together, right? Oopsie, I noticed that I accidentally painted right there. And that's okay. Mistakes happen. Happy little mistakes. You just fix them. Okay, there we go. So pretty easy so far, putting the scene together. And then I'll just take the same texture and just kind of miss that little spot that I screwed up right there. Oopsie. The last thing that we want to add to this nice little scene is some vegetation, right? Because we want to have that. So let's throw in some trees. Yep, there are no mistakes, only happy accidents. Correct. So let's go ahead and choose a tree of my choice. Because it has an Eastern theme to it, it might not be a bad idea to add in maybe some cherry trees. I know that cherry trees aren't yeah, on the map itself, but because it's a more zoomed in version, that's okay. Don't worry, it's not an inconsistency that's gonna break your map or anything. So just go ahead and place a couple and make sure they're facing in the front. Here we go. Place some here. And then in the ones that are further in the back, I'll bring the scale down, right? We're gonna try to create a sense of perspective by putting stamps in the back being a little bit smaller. So to represent that, I'll place some of these, and then I'll put them back down a layer as well, so they're behind that building there. See, it's not going behind there. Make sure it's on the right layer. There we go. Put some in the back. Perfect. Put some in the back. And if you want, you can also scale. You can also make these a little bit darker if you want. Hey, first-time chatter, Tales from Elsewhere. Glad that you're here. Also, first-time chatter as well, MSG Mama. Awesome. So take these little tiny ones that you put. Remember that same trick we did? We made them a little bit darker to represent using contrast to show depth. So let's go ahead and do that again. Here, we'll select all these little ones, and we'll just bring down the brightness a little bit. Make sure they're all selected. Just bring the brightness a little bit. There we go. And now you have that contrast showing in the back. And then the last part you might want to do is maybe adding some road and stuff like that. And so what's not bad idea is you can use a little bit of gray if you want, or you can use textures from a different, let's go to Fantasy Regional. There should be a nice pavement stamp right here, Pavement 2. This works really well. But you might want to, of course, you want to change the scale a little bit, scale it down, and then you're going to want to bring the softness all the way up, because when you're blending, the softness is going to be very helpful. And then I usually like to be in between about 30 and 40, and then just start painting some of that road texture underneath like this. There we go. And then you've pretty much have that capital done. You can throw in other things too if you want, like maybe a sun or something in the background. We can also paint some sky if you want. We could go in and use some kind of texture for a sky. Let's go Fantasy World. Let's see here. This blue should work fine. Let's go ahead and do that. Again, use the brush here, go in like this, and then right on top, and then just go apply. And you'll notice that you'll have to repaint some of the stamps again because we used the blue, and that kind of just happens. If you don't want to worry about that, then don't use a stamp that uses a clipping mask. That's one way to kind of get around that. Once in a while, you have to do things a couple times. There we go. All right. Let's do another one. Let's put in a sun maybe. And then you can, if you want, you can put like an illustration in the background, like a little sun or something. Some clouds if you want. You rotate the sun like that. Put it over there. And then we can also put in some clouds if we want. Here we go. And then we'll put some both in front of the mountains and behind the mountains, because clouds do that, right? So we'll put some in the front and we'll put some in the back. And what I will do is I'll bring the brightness up a little bit for ones in the front. There we go. All right, cool. All right, there you go. And now you have a little scene right there. And if you want, you can add more details as you go. You can go with brightness, bring that down, and you can make it a little bit darker up here just to make it look like you're going further up into the sky. And we'll bring the opacity down just a little bit. There we go. I'm going to create what, like, basically kind of a fade in between the light, between the darker and lighter colors. There you go. That will create some contrast there. MSG Mom, Miss G Mama. Got it. All right. Thank you for correcting me there. All right. So you kind of get the idea of how to kind of put a scene together. I kind of made these a little too dark, actually. Bring the brightness up a little bit. There we go. Okay. And I'm just going to quickly save, and then we'll kind of move on to the making the next thing. Where are we at for time here? 30 minutes in almost? All right. All right. Yes, absolutely join the Discord. Incredibly helpful there, just to let you know. Let's go ahead and throw in some last little details. I'm going to kind of show this idea of perspective again by creating some larger stamps in the foreground. They're going to kind of create like a frame. There we go. And now we really do have the perspective right here where we kind of have things in the foreground and the background. So now that we've kind of made a panel that covers a location on the map, what about creating like a pantheon of gods? And I was thinking what would be cool is to put the pantheon basically over in within these panels right here. I think this might be a good idea. So in these panels right here, we can put like the gods. I think that would be helpful. So we'll create a little pantheon, and I'll create a little scene in which, like a little heavenly scene, basically, and it will expand across all 4 of these panels. So I'll start with kind of putting together the clouds, and I'm going to kind of create a cloudy scene here. Okay, there we go. Let's flip this one around. There we go. And I want to make sure that these are kind of below. There we go. I don't want it to be seen. And then for the top part, I'll flip these around so that I can get, because if you notice these clouds are flat at the bottom. If you want to show the clouds a little bit more on the top, then flip them around like that. That way you won't get these flat edges at the top. And I don't really like that. And so we'll kind of take these clouds and we're going to add a whole bunch in here. In fact, I can even go like this, just so that they can kind of fill in there. Same thing here. I can just kind of go like that so they fill in a little bit. Okay, let's see here. I don't think it looks good there, but it might look okay on the other side. Let's flip this. There we go. Okay. We're kind of creating a cloudy scene here in which our gods, our pantheon is going to be, and I'll show you how to put those together. Okay, let's put one here. Just kind of keep placing them as you go. Let's put one there. Okay. Oops, little tiny clouds. The clouds get kind of repetitive because there's only a certain number of them. All right, cool. We're getting there slowly. And I want to make sure that they overlap into the next scene. So notice that I'm having them overlap each other going into the other frames. That's okay. Do that because I want to show a continuity that those 4 frames are all one frame. All right. Now, normally you could just delete all of those, delete these 3 dividers right here and just make it a whole scene. You could totally do that, but I actually like the idea of having it kind of be divided, but also having a scene that goes all the way through. I think it looks more interesting, but that's not something that you have to do yourself. That is totally up to you on how exactly you want to go about doing it, okay? Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and put some stuff behind it, some more clouds, and this time I'll bring the opacity down, and I'll bring the brightness down a little bit too. Well, actually, maybe not the opacity, just the brightness, actually. Let me just take it down a couple, just see what it looks like. Yeah, there we go. Cool. Just want to make sure that there's some contrast in there. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Okay. Yeah, if you don't like it, you can just delete it. I can totally delete it if you want. I don't mind. Yeah, pretty easy fix. We can go in there and fix it a little bit. Let's see here. Let's go into the frame. So easy. This is a super easy fix. Oopsie, the frame's at the top. And this is an easy fix. Just select the thing that you want. And remember, just use that shape right here. I'm going to go ahead and use snap to grid. Hopefully it'll snap to the center there. There we go. And then you just go in like this, and then you just remove that frame. There you go. Pretty easy stuff, right? There you go. All right, now there's a whole scene at the top. And you can kind of see the difference, right? All right, now let's go in and throw in our sky. Personally, I do like the things better myself, but I don't mind doing what people are suggesting. If they think this looks better than the frames, I personally like the frames better, but to each their own. Okay, let's see here. And then let's do some let's add in some final stamps just in the background. 5, and I'll bring the brightness down even more. So that way we get some extra depth there. Last ones, let's put some at the top here. There we go. We're really going to get that depth. Okay. Yeah, let's just go to undo, and I'll go ahead and add the frames back in. I personally like them. I just think it adds a little bit of little bit of extra feel to it, so that's fine. Let's go ahead and just add those dark stamps in again. But now you know what it looked like without, right? And this is going to just continue to create that depth, right? Because you're using contrast again to create all that depth. That's what's very helpful. Okay, I think that's just about done. And then again, I'll go back and fill in to make sure that this is filled in with blue, unless you want a whitish sky, that's fine. We'll apply it, there we go. And then the same thing, I'll add some darker color here, right here. Oopsie, it's a little bit too dark. Let's go back to around 30-ish. I want to create that kind of fading like feel to it that I like. There we go. And then we'll add another one right here. There we go. Okay. All right, so we've kind of set up the scene here. I think what we should do is go ahead and start putting our gods in now. So we have a nice scene. And what you can do is there's a whole bunch of things. So one thing, there are a couple ones. One, you could use fantasy regional, like the humanoid-like creatures like these right here. But you'll notice that they do have a baked-in shadow. But there is a reason why I made sure that this map was on layer 4, and then these are on layer 5, and it hides the shadow when you place it down. So that's one option. You can use those, or you could use corpses from fantasy battle maps. I've kind of noticed that the corpses also work fine. You just have to play around with them to kind of make them look more godlike. So if I go to a corpse, you can choose whichever one you want. It doesn't really matter. Let's say that I want this to be a god, or I want this to be a god, or whatever it might be. Let's turn the shadow off. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do to kind of give it a godly look. You can add eyes to it. So maybe you want some glowing eyes. So let's go with light. Oopsie. That is not how you spell light. Do as I say and not as I do, okay? Where are we at for time? Well, only 30 minutes. Perfect. Great. Let's go ahead and turn the luminosity to normal. And then just put the light just right on top. And whatever color you want. If it's a god of fire, then, give them yellow, reddish eyes. If it's a god of water, then make it a blue color. It's up to you, right? Maybe if I'm going for a goddish god, then I can go with a different color if I want. Maybe I want to go with green in the orangish color. Switching the colors up kind of makes it look more than just like a human corpse, right? Gives it kind of this otherly feeling to it. So you can change the color to whatever you want. And I'm going to select all the clouds, select all from the set, and then just go to lock. And so this way I won't accidentally select any of that. And then you can also change up the line work. You'll notice that the line work is a little off. So if I change the contrast just a little bit, it should fit a little bit closer to the line work of the stamps. Because what you'll notice about Fantasy World stamp line work is that they're varying colors and they're kind of desaturated just a little bit, right? It's not this hard, dark, deep color. And so changing up the contrast and the brightness a little bit can fix that line work. Look at the line work right now, thick, dark. Bringing the contrast down a little bit kind of causes it to match a little bit better. So a little helpful trick there to kind of get it to match in. And maybe I want to give it like a halo or something. So if I want, I can put like a sun like behind it. I can change the color to make sure that it kind of matches in with the existing color that I have already. If I want to do that, so I can kind of add in like this like colorful halo that goes around them. Like that. I can change the color to make it that bluish color like we did before. Same thing. Let's go with blend mode overlay. We'll put that on top. Add a little bit of glow. Put the glow on top. You can put things in their hands to kind of represent that they're kind of godly. You can give them staves, weapons, whatever it is you want, right? So I can go with a weapon of some kind or a staff. A wustaff. You know what a wustaff is? Add in a staff, and so I can kind of throw in a staff here, put it in their hand, like this. Maybe I don't like that one. I can use this one instead, just turn the shadow off. And remember that trick, you just have to go in and bring the contrast down just a little bit, and you can take that blue light source, and you can just put it, take that blue light if you want, and you can put it on here, on top of this if you want, if you prefer to have it there, or you can have it on both. Copy, paste. There we go. And then you have some light there. And then I can just kind of create group. And I can add more to it too. Maybe I want to add like a cape or something. So I can take a curtain. There we go. Let's see here. That looks good right there. Let's try that. And then I can put that behind it. Let's turn off the shadow. And we might want to change the color to kind of fit that bluish color better. Let's bring the brightness down. Bring the contrast down. There we go. And then you just create group. Call it water god. But you can give it whatever name that you want. Right? And then I can start placing these kind of characters in here. So like I have a god of water right here, and then I can add in another god over in this frame, and then maybe two gods in this frame, and then another god in this frame. And so you can kind of really kind of put together this story. And I really like the pantheon idea. What we'll do is, I don't know if we're gonna have enough time to fill in every single one of these frames, but I want to at least get the pantheon done, or some of the pantheon done, so you can kind of see, because there's some other things that you can do. Like I do want to put heraldry in one, and I want to put maybe some other things. I just want to put them all in there. Let's keep using the corpses. Since I've already used corpses as it, then it's not a bad idea to maybe use another one. So let's maybe put let's put a goddess this time, or whatever gender you want your gods or goddesses to be. Doesn't really matter. Let's see here. Let's bring the contrast down a little bit, and we'll change the hue. I went with blue. Let's go with maybe a purplish color for this god. Maybe it's a god of Fae or something like that. So that's not a bad idea. So let's see here. We could give them all kinds of fun things. If they're a Fae, let's maybe give them some butterfly wings or something. Let's go over to fantasy battle maps, and there might be some bugs. Nope, it's not there. It might be under Fae. Let me take a look. Fantasy battle maps. Let me open that up. Go to Fae. Here we go. Fae forest. Here we go. And so maybe I want to give them some wings. So I can use that, or I can use this bigger one. I think that looks a little bit better. And so we'll give them some wings. I'm going to hide the bug's body behind the corpse. So there's some wings there. Perfect. Let's keep adding more stuff to it. We could put like a flower for a face. Maybe it's a god. If it's a Fae, then obviously the natural world. So you could put like a flower to kind of represent the face. That could be interesting. We could also give him a staff, just like before there was a staff there. Let's give him like this kind of staff, like that. That's fine. There we go. And then we'll go ahead and change. We'll add in some light sources. Always good to throw in light sources. And a little tad bit of color can do a lot. Okay, there we go. And I'll rotate this. And if I want, I think that looks good. We could make it much, much bigger. And then we could also put an eye on it, like a cyclops flower. Let's go with fantasy battle maps. Here are the eyes right here. This one I think might work best because it's circular in its design. Here we go. And we can change that color. If you don't like blue, you could go in and change the hue to kind of whatever color that you want it to be. And then we'll just go ahead and create group, and we'll call it god of, or not water god, but Fae god. There you go. So you're kind of getting the concepts here. So we'll go ahead and take this one. You could put it in here. I kind of want to work my way inward, so we'll put the next god like right here. I've noticed that they're kind of running out of room, so let's maybe put them right here so I can kind of see them more. I want to be able to catch as much of the god as possible. There we go. Okay, we're at 105 changes. Let's save. Let's add in one more god, and then we'll kind of move on. But I think you guys get the formula. Actually, we don't even have to add any more gods. You kind of get the idea on how to create gods. Just whatever stamps that you want to use to create your characters. Again, I usually use corpses or humanoid characters from Fantasy Regional. Remember, those Fantasy Regional stamps do have baked-in shadows, so corpses might work better. But you guys get the general idea. And then you would fill in those negative spaces with all the various gods. And you could put like a major, like maybe the major domo or the head god in the center, right? And you can make it crazy. Gods don't have to be humanoid. You can make them look like they're made of half building, half creature, or they're clouds with tentacles, or whatever you want. So you have a lot of options on kind of choosing that. Let's also, let's go make some heraldry real quick. in the map. So I put a city here, and I know that I mentioned cities would be in each corner, but I already showed you the formula on how to put together a scene with buildings and stuff. So let's put together some heraldry that kind of represents something. So let's make maybe some dwarven heraldry. Now, you can always put your heraldry just right where it is on the map, wherever the place is. So I could go in here, we'll go back to Fantasy World here, we'll go to heraldry. Of course, you could just put your heraldry just right here if you want, just right on the map itself. Especially if you have a lot of room on your map, you could put heraldry just right on it. But my suggestion, especially if you don't have a lot of room, then just put the heraldry up top here, right? And so we'll go ahead and select a stamp that we want to use to represent the dwarves. Pick a stamp that I like here. I kind of like this shape right here. It's a shield. It's a nice shape. And I think I'll make it purple instead. Let's look at the colors that are on these. I'm seeing some reds and some bluish colors. Blue might actually work best for the shield because I'm seeing blue roofs. So let's maybe use the blue shield instead. That kind of makes sense. Sticking with the continuity, right? Okay, there's the shield I want. I'm going to put it in right here. So you'll start with the shield itself. There's step one. And then let's create the bottom mantle. So I'll just use the blue colors here, and I'll create the bottom mantle and the side mantle as well. So I'll take these, switch them around. There we go. Kind of lining them up. I know it's not centered inside, and that's okay. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Let's also throw in maybe some parts in the bottom here, like that. Let's put another one in, like that. There we go. That looks good. Let's put a shield. Let's put a crown at the top, and then we'll put these at the top as well, and it'll go behind it. There we go. Now we have a nice heraldry right here. We're going to place it right on top like this. Notice that the cloud right here is kind of peeking out right there. I'll have to end up moving that. But let's go ahead and put that there. There we go. One cool kind of trick that you can kind of do if you want this to pop out more is you can select all of it and choose a layer shadow. And you can choose a white shadow. You can bring the blur down of the shadow, bring the intensity down. You can add a nice white outline around it so it will pop out. So I'm adding a nice, and I'm using layer shadow because then that way the shadows won't overlap each other. And so layer shadow works perfect for that. And so we'll put that on right in the center, kind of line it up that we can. And then we'll start putting together the other elements to the heraldry. So I might want to pick something that would work well for dwarves. There's double axes, which makes sense. They probably cut down trees for materials. So you could put down double axes inside of it, and it evens around the same color scheme. Or you could use a hammer. It's up to you. You can choose whatever kind of symbol you want. And then, of course, you can throw in one last little item. You can throw in a banner of some kind. You can just choose whatever banner you want, whatever is the most decorative. Like you can choose one that's a little bit more decorative, like this. Oh, you notice that it does hide some of the heraldry. So if that happens, that's okay. Just kind of bring it up and then scale this down. We'll fit it in. And I do think blue and this kind of color work well together. Just scale it up till it fits in there, and then you can put whatever text that you want inside of it. Just make sure that it's kind of centered a little bit, and then I'll select everything, create group, and it's called heraldry. Now, if you don't know what kind of heraldry to kind of create, don't worry. I do have some streams. There's some streams on YouTube of some master classes on how to create heraldry. So go to YouTube, go check out that how to create heraldry, where I just kind of go over the same basics on how I made them here. Let's see what our time is. We're at 44 minutes. We have time. So let's create some more stuff here. Let's continue on the Pantheon. I just wanted to get that put in before we started. So let's continue on the Pantheon. And, you know, we could use, let's go back over to Fantasy Battle Maps. Let's go back to Corpse. Let's create the Major Domo god. Let's see here. I think there's a really nice stamp in Gothic. There it is right there. This will work perfect. So this will be kind of like our goddess figure right here. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to set this up to where maybe like there's a twin goddess or the two gods. And so we can put one on this side. Don't forget to bring that contrast down to make sure that it pops out. Copy, paste. So I'm going to have like this idea of like a twin goddess being the major gods. And I'm going to push these down a layer as well so they're kind of below. There we go, like this. And I'll kind of line them up like this. And and then maybe I can put like some kind of weird symbol right there, like a summon. A summoning circle might not be a bad idea. Now let's go with this one. I can kind of place this right here. And one thing I'm kind of noticing is that this frame does kind of get in the way. And so it might not be a bad idea to go in and kind of remove that one so that I can have a centered piece. So I go in, select that, go over to line, go here, and I'll go ahead and remove that middle one. It's okay with the other two, but I feel like this one works better. So that way it's nice and kind of centered. I have this nice centerpiece. And I don't like that color. So what I might want to do is maybe go to luminosity, bring the contrast down and bring the brightness up. And then it will kind of pick up the color beneath it. I think that looks good. And I think I'm going to unlock all the clouds. And I can start shaping the clouds to kind of frame around it. So I'll go ahead and take some of these clouds and I'll start framing around it. Let's put one behind the goddess. Let's see here. This one can go up one. There we go. And this one can go behind. There we go. Cool. All right. Let's go add in one more. Let's put one right here like that. And I think I'll have this one be in the front. So I'll bring the brightness up. There we go. Now we're creating a sense of depth here. And I want to maybe make this a little bit bigger. Okay, and we'll rotate this one. Maybe they're touching the balls here. Let's rotate just a little bit. So there'll be just a little, not exactly the same, but dang close, right? And then maybe I want to have some kind of piece in the center there. I was thinking maybe a light source might be a good idea. Like this kind of represent like a divine deity or something. So let's go and we already have the blue, so let's not use blue this time. Let's see here. Well, it's okay to use this kind of offset blue. This is kind of a different bluish color. And I'll bring it all the way up like this. We'll copy, paste, put another one on there. And this time you can actually change the blend mode. It's always nice to stack up these things and then like playing around with the blend modes. I kind of like that screen kind of color. I think that looks good. And then we'll use that same color to make the eyes, to do the eyes again. So we'll go ahead and go normal, bring the color down. I think glowing eyes are just a nice way of kind of representing something otherworldly. And so we'll put those eyes there. There we go. Perfect. And then what we can do is normally you would put some more gods in there, but it's not a bad idea to maybe throw in some dragons or something as background. So if I go in to Fantasy World, you'll notice there's just some dragons here. And so I can kind of place these on layer -5. And then I'll kind of have a series of dragons kind of just flying around in the background, like the dragons and the gods kind of thing. So I'll flip this one around, put that one right there. And then just to show depth, I'll make these just a little bit darker and a little bit smaller. Remember, using contrast is kind of a trick. And then we'll make this one a little bit bigger. Let's make this back. And make sure the brightness is all the way up. There we go. Bigger one. Let's put that one like right here maybe. And I'll put it in front of the clouds as well. There we go. All right, so you got this nice little scene right here that you have there. Let's go ahead and save it. Let's see what time we're at here. 3:49. Okay. Well, I think we're probably going to call it good here, but I think you get the general idea. Like we talked about how to make the frame not complex. And again, the frame is going to evolve as you start adding things and start creating things. You can delete, remove some sections of the frame to make sure that you have room for a continuous picture. Or if you wanted to, you could have each one of these frames represent a timeline, right? Like each one of these frames is like, maybe this frame right here is the Genesis story, and this one is a catastrophe, and then this one is a rejuvenation period, and this one is maybe a modern time, right? So you can use the frames in any way that you wish, okay? So, but you've got overall kind of showed you how to kind of put things together. We made a scene using stamps to represent like a location. We've made a kind of a flowing scene, a pantheon of the gods. We also created heraldry. And so we kind of put all these elements and all these pieces together. Oops, that's not supposed to be there. We put all these kind of pieces together, and really you draw that information from the world that you created. So most of you have already probably created a world and you have your lore. That's where you get the information to fill in each one of these little plates or little spaces, right? It's from the lore of your world. Again, the creation story, or important battles that took place, or whatever it might be. So there's tons of ideas that you can fill these in when. Don't get lost. Use your map as a guide for what to put in them. Use the lore from your world. And if I know world builders, they're always putting together as much lore as they can. And so you should have a rich reserve of lore that you can draw from to fill in these spaces. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. That is it. I think the next stream is on Friday, and that's going to be a bandits camp or a bandits hideout. Basically, we're going to be creating a hollowed out stump, a huge hollowed out tree that we're going to use to create a bandits fort inside of. So I'm excited for that. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe and healthy, and merry map making, everyone. I'll see you all at the end of the week. Okay. Take it easy and good luck with the rest of your week. Take care, everyone. Bye.